Few genres of film like to catch an audience off guard as much as the world of horror. So much of this murky corner of cinema is made up of shocks, surprises, and veering left when viewers were adamant things were heading right. While such twists and game-changing revelations are often seen during a movie's final act, at times it's the opening moments of films which shake things up. And it's those pictures which are in the spotlight here. With that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are 10 opening horror movie scenes that changed everything. Number 10. Halloween Resurrection. Despite Halloween H20 bringing fresh life to the franchise, that life was brutally extinguished with Halloween Resurrection 4 years later. And while the forehead-slapping lasting memory of that 2002 picture is Busta Rhymes laying down some kung fu moves on Michael Myers, the opening scene of Resurrection absolutely altered the entire franchise. Of course, that opening saw Haddonfield's infamous shape shockingly kill off the institutionalized Laurie Strode, stabbing Laurie and dropping her to her death from the top of Grace Anderson Sanitarium. With that, one of the most iconic and popular protagonists in horror history was removed from the Halloween chessboard, as Resurrection instead focused on placing some fame-hungry young adults in the Myers house. So bad was the response to Halloween Resurrection, it brought the franchise to a crashing halt before Rob Zombie rebooted the series in 2007. Number 9. Slumber Party Massacre 2. The original Slumber Party Massacre featured a drill-wielding middle-aged man as its killer, but that film's 1987 follow-up changes things vastly. As Slumber Party Massacre 2 opens up, we're reintroduced to Courtney, one of the survivors of the prior movie, and quickly have her friendship group established. Where the major change comes in this opening sequence is that, bizarrely, the killer of the first feature is being resurrected as a young, handsome, leather-adorned greaser whose drill is attached to the head of his guitar. That's not the only landscape-shifting change of Slumber Party Massacre 2 though, for it doesn't take long for our greaser to burst out into song as this sequel oddly becomes a pseudo-musical. Yeah, Slumber Party Massacre 2 is quite a departure from its predecessor, and so much of that change is laid out in the sequel's opening few minutes. Number 8. Happy Death Day. Happy Death Day's opening 9 minutes set the tale for something utterly unique in the horror genre. Those 9 minutes introduce us to Tree Gelman, a college student who wakes up in someone else's bed after a one-night stand. From there, Tree returns to a sorority house, does her best to ignore her own birthday, is late for class, has it revealed to the audience that she's having an affair with her lecturer, and is then killed by a baby-masked killer. While that in itself would usually be quite the shock, how Happy Death Day changed everything is that Tree immediately wakes up back in the bed of that aforementioned one-night stand. From there, this picture becomes very much the Groundhog Day of horror, or with a healthy dollop of humor throughout, as Tree gets killed time and time again, awakening on that same morning, doing her best not to get killed in the same ways as previously, and trying to work out who her killer is. Number 7. Final Destination. The opening sequence of Final Destination changed horror in that it introduced audiences to a concept that would spawn a 5-movie franchise with a 6th film currently waiting to go into production. Of course, that concept was an opening scene where a tragic disaster takes place, numerous people lose their lives, and it's revealed what we've just seen is merely a premonition from one of our central characters. From there, this character manages to stop themselves and certain others from being a part of this disaster, and these survivors are then stalked by the Grim Reaper for having cheated death. As for the opening scene that introduced us to this staple of the Final Destination series, it's the mid-air explosion of Volley Airlines Flight 180 as seen in the premonition by Devon Sawa's Alex Browning. For those who Alex managed to stop on this flight, they're killed in ways that mildly mimic elements of their deaths from this premonition, something else which also became a theme of the franchise. Number 6. Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. While some opening scenes changed everything in a positive sense, the opening of Jason Goes to Hell The Final Friday changed the landscape of that movie in a way that left the picture viewed by many as being the absolute worst Friday the 13th film. As Jason Goes to Hell opens, it's very much same old for a Friday the 13th picture. By that, it means that Jason Voorhees is stalking some pretty young woman as she prepares to take a shower in a Crystal Lake cabin. Unfortunately for Jason though, this is all part of a sting by the FBI and a SWAT team as he's lured out into the open woods and blown to pieces. What this means is the vast majority of The Final Friday doesn't feature the physical presence of Jason. Instead, his spirit is passed from person to person in the form of a turd-like parasite. Yeah. After 9 movies, you can appreciate the franchise trying a new approach, hot on the heels of Jason Takes Manhattan of course, but removing the iconic form of Jason Voorhees from the bulk of Jason Goes to Hell, that was not the new approach to take. Number 5. Bride of Chucky. For the first 3 films, the sole villain of the Child's Play series was Charles Lee Ray, aka Chucky. However, the 4th movie in the series, Ronnie Yu's Bride of Chucky, used its opening scene to introduce audiences to a second antagonist in the form of Jennifer Tilly's Tiffany Valentine. In the time since then, Tiffany, and Tilly playing herself, has gone on to become a hugely popular character, being a key figure in Bride's Seed of Chucky follow-up, having a fun cameo in Curse of Chucky, returning fully for Cult of Chucky, and being part of the impressive ensemble that makes up the fantastic Chucky TV series. That Bride of Chucky opening scene sees Tiff, who is of course the ex-lover of Charles Lee Ray, gain possession of Chucky's remains and rebuild the nefarious good guy doll. Before long, she herself is murdered, by Chucky of course, and has her spirit trapped in its own doll, and both the Tiffany doll and Tilly playing a skewed version of herself have been magnificent additions to the Child's Play franchise. Number 4. Last Girl Standing. As already mentioned, many a horror film has started by showing that picture sinister threat getting to work and doing what they do best, as in putting on a show of their twisted abilities so that audiences have an idea of what to expect. So when 2015's Last Girl Standing opens up with a deer mask-adorned killer butchering a group of generic young adults, that's very much what we've come to expect from the genre. The only catch is, this Benjamin R. Moody helmed feature actually has someone survive this encounter with a monstrous figure known only as The Hunter. What Last Girl Standing does brilliantly is, rather than being a typical slasher or maybe even having the hunter to continue to chase down the Kashka Villa-Lobos' Cameron, it instead opts to bring something fresh to the world of horror. By that, the film actually becomes a character study of sorts, as it picks things up with Cameron 4 years later and spotlights her as a timid, paranoid figure dealing with PTSD as a result of seeing her friends murdered, and she herself only just managing to get the best of the hunter. Last Girl Standing, man, it's a very clever, unique film. Number 3. A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. After franchise fave Nancy Thompson was killed off towards the end of A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, the Elm Street series seemed destined to move forward with Dream Warrior survivors Kristen, Kincaid, and Joey. For those hoping for this trio to drive the series to new heights, they were left extremely frustrated when the opening moments of A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master completely flipped the script. After Freddy Krueger is bizarrely resurrected in Kincaid's dreams by the hero's dog's fiery piss, bringing Krueger back to life. Yes, really. Kincaid is quickly dispatched by Springfield's most infamous son. Immediately after this, Joey is killed by Freddy in a bonkers waterbed sequence, and with that, the Dream Master changed the game and caught audiences off guard. Of course, it wouldn't be too long after this that Kristen herself would be slaughtered by Krueger, and Elm Street 4 totally changed its expected direction to instead focus on newcomer Alice Johnson. Number 2. 3 from Hell. The opening of Rob Zombie's 3 from Hell changed the course of the film and the dynamic of the entire Firefly clan. Tragically though, this wasn't a creative choice by Zombie, but a decision forced upon him by the poor health of Sid Haig. In Zombie's 3 Firefly films, Haig of course played maniacal clown Captain Spaulding. Despite Spaulding, Baby, and Otis all seemingly being fatally gunned down in the explosive, Freebird-infused finale of The Devil's Rejects, the writer-director resurrected that trio for 3 from Hell 14 years later. While the troublesome 3 were intended to be the focus of this threequel, things had to be changed once filming began. Due to the deteriorating health of Sid, the Spaulding character was written out of 3 from Hell in the film's opening moments, with him killed off via lethal injection after the Fireflies had spent the time since The Devil's Rejects incarcerated. To continue with the 3-pronged attack that worked so well on its predecessor, 3 from Hell then introduced Foxy Coltrane, the half-brother of Otis, to fill the movie's Captain Spaulding void. Tragically, Sid Haig would pass away just 5 days after 3 from Hell's release. An absolute legend and so very missed. Number 1. Scream. Few horror movies changed the literal face of the genre as much as Wes Craven's Scream did back in 1996. Yes, Psycho had shockingly killed off its main star earlier than expected way back in 1960, but Janet Leigh's Marion Crane at least made it until the 45-minute-ish mark of that film. For Scream, it took that concept, as in killing off your headline act, and turned the volume right up to 11. Of course, the opening of Scream brutally slaughtered Casey Becker as horror hounds were first introduced to Ghostface. A character getting killed in the first few moments of a horror film is fairly standard, as that sets the table and lets you know what to expect. What made Casey's demise so game-changing though is she was played by Drew Barrymore. And not just Drew Barrymore, but a Drew Barrymore who was front and center on all of the marketing material surrounding Scream's release. When looking at the rest of the cast of Scream, they were all relatively unknowns at that point. For instance, a few people may have known Neve Campbell for Party of 5 or from The Craft, which released just earlier that year. David Arquette was likely best known for the Parenthood TV series, and Courtney Cox was only 2 years into her Friends run and not quite the huge star she'd later become. Scream was so heavily marketed around Drew Barrymore as the star, so the death of her character within the first 10 minutes, that was huge. It completely changed the dynamic of Scream and breathed new life into a horror genre that had long grown stale. So, that's our 10 opening horror movie scenes that changed everything. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, turn those notification bells on, and come and give us a follow on X at What Culture Horror. While you're there, you can find myself at Culture Left Peg, but most importantly, be sure to have the best possible day. Whether you're doing something or whether you're doing absolutely nothing, I hope it goes well for you. And if things aren't going so well, I really do hope they turn around as soon as possible. I've been Andrew Powell from What Culture Horror, and I'll catch you down the road.